Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in about 1 minute. Right. Okay. Do we want to go ahead and get started, or do you want to give it another minute to let people join?
Let's maybe get another minute or so.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to today's American College of Healthcare Executives virtual keynote session titled Leading from Your Upper Brain, a Neuroscience Approach to Driving Performance, sponsored by the Indiana Healthcare Executives Network. My name is Katie Russo, and I'm with the professional development team here at ACHE, and I'm thrilled to be here with you all. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly go over a few items to help you navigate through our virtual environment. The handouts for this session are posted under the resources tab of the live event, and the session is worth 1.5 hours of face-to-face continuing education credits. While credits will be applied to your ACHE account in approximately 2 to 3 weeks from today and based on your live session attendance. At that point, you may view or print a certificate by navigating to the My Event section within ache.org and locating this course. To ensure your participation is recorded for credit, dialing into the session is not enabled, but if you are on the go, we do encourage you to participate using the Zoom app. Each live session is recorded and will be available within the course in 48 hours in the learning management system. For the purposes of noise control, your lines will be muted for the duration of the session unless there's an active discussion. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions during the sessions by typing them into the chat feature, so feel free to submit those along the way. Following the conclusion of today's session, a program evaluation will be available in the LMS on the session's homepage for you to provide feedback on your program experience. Please be sure to fill this out, as ACHE truly values your input. I now would like to introduce you to Chad Dilley, who is the board chair of the Indiana Healthcare Executives Network. Chad, take it away.
All right, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Really excited for a great evening we have planned. So going to go through our awards presentation, turn you over to the keynote. So really a fun night tonight. First, we want to start off with just thanking our sponsors. Ice Miller, our premier sponsor, been our premier sponsor this year. Thank you for being a great partner. Could not do what we do without Ice Miller. Platinum sponsor, HEPE Engineering, appreciate HEPE. And then our gold sponsors, NF Care, Cornerstone, Arc Design, and KSM. We really could not do what we do at IHEN without our sponsors. Want to just put a quick plug in to follow us on all the socials. We love to communicate and let you know what's going on with the chapter. But please feel free to follow us on all the socials. Most importantly, probably LinkedIn is going to be one of the best places to follow us on. So we really appreciate your following us on social media. We do have our board slate here. As you can see, folks that have applied for the board and kind of gone through the vetting process. We have the slate here between Angie, Taryn, Shree, Alex, and Andy Van Zee. Really a great group here, representative of multiple organizations, many different backgrounds. This slate will be live for 30 days, and then the board just procedurally, or excuse me, not the board, but membership procedurally will vote on this during a December meeting. This board slate will be posted for 30 days and have the opportunity to vet through that. So really appreciate these 5 individuals, their interest in joining the board, and look forward to a vote in December. So with that, again, we're going to go through awards presentation. But before we get to the awards presentation, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to everybody. I have had the opportunity to serve as the board chair for the last 3 years, and it's been just an absolute honor. At the end of this year, we'll transition to Rodney Hollis, who is on the call here. And I have no doubt that Rodney will be able to take IHEN even further than where we've progressed. As we look at 3 years ago, we're in the midst of restructuring how the board governs. We've made a lot of progress. And most importantly, the most recent data of our member satisfaction survey shows that you're satisfied. Over the last 18 to 20 months, it's been very, very difficult in all of our industries and all of our occupations to be able to navigate this environment. And it's really no different in terms of a professional society like IHEN. We really appreciate the innovation that's really led to membership growth and member satisfaction that's actually ahead of ACHE nationally, a chapter that's financially stable. But most importantly, seeing many of you grow has been the best piece. Seeing many folks advance to fellow status and just continue to grow your careers. That's what IHEN is about. It's about you and it's about your growth. And so we really appreciate everything that we've done. Could not do it without the fellow board members. Just want to say thank you to the fellow board members and all the volunteers that help make IHEN what IHEN is. And really look forward to Rodney picking up the baton and running with it. So with that, we're going to transition to our awards. I have the opportunity to announce the Service Excellence Award, and then Rodney is going to announce the Platinum Award. So our Service Excellence Award recognizes an individual who's demonstrated dedication in providing exceptional service to citizens and healthcare workers in Indiana. And as the team met to review, there was one name that kept coming up to the top, and that was Dr. Nir Minikimi. He is the Fairbanks Endowed Chair and serves as the Chair of Health Policy and Management Departments of the IU Richard Fairbanks School of Public Health, and he holds the rank of professor. He also holds an appointment as scientist with Regan Street Institute, which is internationally recognized in informatics and healthcare research. And they're dedicating to improvement of health through research that enhances the quality and cost effectiveness of healthcare. Most recently, Dr. Minikimi, his work focuses at the intersection of health policy and medicine and business. So since the start of the pandemic, he's been the principal investigator for Indiana SARS-CoV-2 prevalence study, which is the only statewide random sample testing study in the United States. The work has generated breakthrough knowledge about COVID-19 and generated statewide, national, and international media attention. As the lead scientist on this project, he managed a multidisciplinary team of epidemiologists, biostatisticians, public health, and infectious disease experts. Dr. Minikimi and his team recently received the HSR Impact Award from Academy Health. And we just really appreciate the work that he has done through the COVID-19 pandemic. And then also just what he does at the IU school, the Fairbanks School of Public Health, and everything he does to help train future healthcare leaders. Dr. Minikimi is actually at a conference right now and has been speaking. And so we've prepared, asked him to prepare a video. So with that, we'll turn it over to the video here and hear some words from our award recipient. I cannot hear audio. I don't know about you.
I'm not hearing it either.
Thank you so much for recognizing me and the work being done at the IU Fairbanks School of Public Health. As many of you know, the Fairbanks School is still relatively new, having been established only 9 years ago. Nevertheless, I'm very proud to be part of the team whose mission it is to improve the health of the people of Indiana and beyond. I am the lead of the Health Policy and Management Department that houses the MHA program, the BS program in Health Services Management, and Public Health Masters and PhD programs in Health Policy and Management. In my department, we contribute to the Fairbanks School's mission by training the future health administration and public health workforce, conducting research that enables evidence-based health policy and evidence-based health administration decisions, and providing service to support public and private sector officials with high-level responsibilities for their agencies and organizations. Given that my team operates at the intersection of health administration, policy, business, and public health, the pandemic has really been our Super Bowl. As early as March 2020, We began working with the governor's office and Dr. Box at the State Department of Health to generate high-quality evidence to support pandemic-related policies. At the same time, our team at the Fairbanks School of Public Health reached out to multiple hospital CEOs, and then with the help of the Indiana Hospital Association, to all hospitals in the state. Our goal was to leverage the access we have to data, our analytic capabilities, and our public health and health administration expertise to support real-time decisions being made in every hospital C-suite in Indiana. To this end, we began producing facility-level surge models with predictions regarding how fast and how many people, given the demographics of each hospital's market, might be hospitalized or need ventilation so that hospitals can be best prepared. In addition to working with the governor's office, IDOH, and local health leaders, my department played a critical role in supporting Mayor Hochstead of Indianapolis and Dr. Kane at the Marion County Public Health Department. We had teams working around the clock to synthesize research, collect and analyze field data, provide expert advice so that the city and the county could maximize the protection of its citizens. All in all, I feel very fortunate to be able to contribute so meaningful to Indiana's health policy and health administration infrastructure. I was born and raised in New York and have lived as an adult in Maryland, Florida, and Alabama for the last 7 years here in Indiana. I like to say that our state is the Goldilocks state. It's not too big, it's not too small. We have enough resources and personnel in the state to have in-house expertise on most issues, but we're also small enough to allow everyone to know each other, whether it's state government, hospital officials, or other community-based leaders. Indiana has repeatedly demonstrated that we know how to get the job done when we work together. As such, I accept this award on behalf of the entire Fairbanks School of Public Health team, who are fortunate to have such wonderful partners to work with in Indiana. Thank you, IHEN, for this recognition and for the important work you do representing and, more importantly, developing healthcare executives in Indiana.
Yes, congratulations to Dr. Nir Menachemi. Hello, everyone. I am Rodney Hollis. As Chad mentioned, I am the chair-elect for our IHEN chapter. Definitely look forward to taking on the baton as Chad expressed. I have the pleasure of introducing to you our IHEN Platinum Award. And so the Platinum Award is the highest honor bestowed by IHEN for an outstanding executive and member who has made significant contributions to the healthcare profession. So Dr. Curtis Wright is currently president and CEO of Eskenazi Medical Group and an assistant professor of clinical medicine. He graduated from the Mayo Clinic School of Medicine and went through his internal medicine residency there. He was recruited here to the IU School of Medicine's Division of General Internal Medicine in 2004. And within Eskenazi Health, he has served in various leadership roles, including Chief of Medicine, Associate Program Director for Internal Medicine, and Medical Director for the Hospital Medicine Program. He was recently the 2020 ACP Indiana Lifetime Achievement Award by the Indiana chapter of the American College of Physicians. He was the 2019 Indiana Minority Business Magazine Champion of Diversity, 2018 Accomplished Achievement Award by Center for Leadership Development, and IU Department of Medicine. He's won the IU Department of Medicine Distinguished Teacher Award. And in 2010 and 2013 won the IU Trustee Teaching Award. So congratulations to Dr. Curtis Wright on receiving the IHEN Platinum Award. And I know Dr. Curtis Wright was having some issues with logging on, so I'll continue with the introduction of our keynote speaker. And if we have time at the end, we can allow some time for Dr. Wright to speak. But before I get to the keynote speaker, wanted to acknowledge our 2021 ACHE Distinguished Service Award recipients. Kelly Braverman, she won the Distinguished Award, as well as Stanley McBride. We also have our 2021 Service Award recipients, Jeff Byram, myself, Dan LaRoe, and Jonathan Shane. So congratulations to our Distinguished Service Award and our Service Award recipients. And before I read the keynote introduction, Dr. Curtis Wright, I see you are on. Congratulations on winning the IHEN Platinum Award. Do you have any words or anything you'd like to say?
Well, I just want to say thank you for the nomination, and I'm incredibly, honored to win the award. It's my pleasure to be able to join everyone here this evening, and I feel honored to be amongst all of the great leaders, and I look forward to this discussion just like everyone else. And special thanks to Rodney, who I've seen really grow as a leader, and Rodney, who is the person that got me into IHEN. So many thanks to him, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, now let's dive into our program. And again, thank you for joining us. We have an amazing program here before you, where you will learn about leadership and the impact leader behavior has on performance. So as you see on the screen in front of you, Dr. Michael Frisinia is the CEO of the Frisinia Group. He's an internationally recognized leadership expert, speaker, and author. He's developed leaders and organizational teams worldwide. Every year, he speaks to national and international healthcare organizations, nonprofit organizations, and audiences as diverse as engineers to organ procurement organizations. He recently spoke to a physician organization, I want to say last week. He's a featured speaker for the American Hospital Association, ACHE, the Joint Commission, South Carolina Hospital Association, and many others. His work in healthcare leadership, safety, and quality has been recognized by the Joint Commission in their publication, Doing the Right Things Right. Dr. Frisinia retired from the U.S. Army, having served in the Medical Service Corps in a variety of positions of increasing responsibility throughout his career. He completed postgrad studies at Cambridge University in England, served as a faculty member and subject matter expert in leadership and ethics at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, New York, and the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences and School of Medicine in Bethesda, Maryland. Prior to entering civilian healthcare, Dr. Frisinia served as a consultant to the Army Surgeon General for Medical Research and Development and to the Department of Defense Human Genome Project. He is a visiting fellow in medical humanities at the Medical College of Pennsylvania and a visiting scholar at the Hastings Center. All right. Without further ado, I introduce you to Dr. Michael Frisinia.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Rodney, and thanks to all of you at the Indiana Health Executive Network. Congratulations to all the award winners. It's a wonderful time to celebrate. Certainly, everyone understands the stress and dynamic of the last 15 to 16 months or more. And this is a night that we should celebrate. And for all of you with roots that I have in Indiana as an IU alumni, doing my master's and doctoral work in Bloomington prior to my assignment at West Point. The topic that we shared with you tonight is this whole idea of leadership and the value and importance of leadership. And I can't tell you enough how excited I am to share this concept of leading from your upper brain. This is an area in which if you understand the significance of your behavior and the impact of your behavior as a leader on others, and what that impact literally does to their brains. I have this saying that I share with leaders frequently, that you mess with the brains of your people, the people who are doing the work of the organization at the tactical level, right? Getting the frontline staff, people engaging patients, and then as you cascade up to the top of the organization, and you shift out of that tactical realm into a more strategic realm, what happens at the strategic level and the planning dynamic and how that cascades down to the organization, you mess with the brains of people trying to do the work of the organization at your own performance peril. And that's what we want to talk about tonight. I don't have any financial issues to disclose relevant to any product or product selling. For about the next 70 minutes or so, I'd just like to have a conversation with you. So if you have any questions at any time through the presentation, and this is a keynote, right? It has a lecture component to it, but I want it to be interactive. I have a couple breakout sessions for you. Certainly this isn't training, it isn't teaching. With the time that I have with you this evening, the best I can hope for is opening your mind to a new concept, a new idea about leadership. And we heard Dr. Menakemi talk about evidence-based, science-based in the work of public health and health administration. And I like to think that we can have, and I believe we do have now, an evidence-based, science-based approach to leadership. It's very hard. It isn't soft. It's not about psychology or personality. It's about behavior, and behavior is very real. It's very concrete. We experience each other in behavior. We know what that behavior does to us, positive or negatively. More important, we now know what that behavior does to our brains, positively or negatively, in an effect that I just like to call the upper brain, which is right behind the prefrontal cortex in neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, versus the survival brain, which is the limbic system of the brain, which is comprised of a number of key physiological, biological parts of the brain, most notably the amygdala. And so the concept I want to share with you is that as a leader in your own behavior, and this is the most important concept, so I'm going to say it slowly, give you an opportunity to ponder it, maybe even write it down. You certainly can. It'll be archived, we're recording, so you'll be able to go back to it. But this is the foundational thought that drove me 10 years ago to start investigating and investing my research and my writing and my teaching and my consulting work in developing leaders in this idea that what you're really leading when you're leading other people is you're leading their brain. And you're either going to lead them from their upper brain, which will get you to growth and development and achievement and performance and a sense of mutual beneficial meaning, value, and work, or you're going to lead them to the lower brain where they come to work simply to survive. So that's the contrast. That's what we're looking at. Now, one way of looking at it is, how do you feel right now about the work that you're doing? Clearly being able to get in touch with emotions and the state of wellness of people, as we're hearing a lot about today, was it in a high state of readiness and performance and a high state of wellness prior to the pandemic in healthcare? We already knew we had a high degree of physician and nurse burnout. We already knew that suicides among physicians was increasing. And so it isn't as if we were in a really good state before the pandemic, and the pandemic has only added significant more burden to people in the three primary areas that impact the upper brain for growth and development and achievement, performance, you being successful in the execution of your strategic plan, and people coming to work in a survival mode, simply trying to get through the day. And this is what this picture of mythical King Sisyphus, who was cursed by the gods for lying to the goddess of hell, to start every morning at sunrise carrying this heavy burden of this boulder to a top of a hill, and only to get there at sunset, put it down and have it roll back to the bottom of the hill. And I think that getting in touch with emotions and being able to express how you feel right now about the work you're doing is the first step to creating a healthy dynamic in the three things that contribute to engagement on the one hand, and you as leaders being able to stay connected to your upper brain and engaged, because that's a significant performance detriment, not only to what it means for not achieving the results you desire as leaders, but the impact on wellness for your organization and the quality of life people of your organization experience when they come to your organization to work every day. And those three things are energy. Do you have a high state of mental, emotional, spiritual, physical energy, or are you exhausted in all four of those dynamics? I'm going to have you take a quick survey. I'm going to give you a tool where you can take a survey to measure just the energy component of these three stools that comprise significant amount of high level engagement versus disengagement, with many people call moral injury or burnout. Because if you don't have a high degree of energy and you're exhausted, you can't have a high degree of engagement. Connecting literally in a physical sense to your prefrontal cortex and cingulate cortex, all the things related to your technical skill, your training, your talent, your intellect, your motivational drive for achievement, versus this instinctive drive that's more powerful for all of us as human beings, that trumps every other driver, and that is the ability to survive. And that's the other two factors that come into play in engagement on one hand for performance in leading the brains of people, and disengagement and where they find themselves when they get stuck in their lower brain just surviving. And that's in self-efficacy, a sense of meaning, value, purpose in their work, and also a set of mind set toward the work itself, whether they're very hopeful that tomorrow can be a better day, or cynicism and futility, which this picture depicts. Sisyphus can't help but live this day every day through all eternity. He lied to get eternal life. And so the worst curse you could give someone who's never going to die is put them in daily work routines that have absolutely no value. And I have great concern that we have a lot of people working in healthcare today who feel like this. They come to work every day, they come to work in the dark, they go home in the dark, they labor all day long to carry and shoulder this tremendous burden of healthcare responsibility and patient care, administrative work, support work, the delivery of care in a very highly complex, very volatile, very chaotic and constant changing, ambiguous healthcare system complexity. And go home at the end of the day wondering if all of their effort had any lasting value or contribution. And so what I'm asking you to consider in my remarks this evening is the idea of thinking and behaving differently when you think about leadership. So here is that underlying foundational premise, that individual leader behavior, your individual leader behavior, whatever constitutes your behavior makeup, whether you tend to be fast-paced or you tend to be more responsive, whether you tend to be more assertive, whether you tend to be more task-focused, whether you tend to be more people-focused, whether you have a high empathic compassion dynamic or a lower empathic, whether you tend to have a higher degree of emotional awareness and emotional management, or whether you tend to be more compulsive or have less self-awareness and self-management dynamic. Your behavior makeup is the singular most important predictor to how your teams will connect to your plan, to your strategic plan, to the day-to-day objectives, and drive the results that you desire as leaders. And if people cannot connect and engage with their leaders at all levels of the organization, frontline leader, the leader typically with the least experience to lead and has the greatest import to the plan in the day-to-day execution at the bedside of patients and other areas of the healthcare system, we tend to have our least experienced, least trained leaders at the most critical juncture of what creates the high degree of probability for performance outcome. And so how you have them develop in your organization, the development architecture, the development strategy. I know I could come into any of your facilities and look for a financial architecture of your organization and find it. You have the general accepting accounting principles and practices. You have a way of doing healthcare finance. You know there are rules that govern a high degree of healthcare financial success, and things that if you did that you would literally destroy the financial viability of your organization. So you have that architecture. It's very firm, it's very detailed, it's very precise, and you apply rigorous logic to the execution of your financial architecture. You do the same thing on the clinical elements of your healthcare delivery system. You have science-based, evidence-based clinical practices, clinical protocols, clinical pathways, replication of a high degree of precision and accuracy and continuous performance improvement so that every patient is getting the highest level of safety, the highest level of quality, and the highest level of patient experience across the board, every procedure, every time, every patient. But if I come and look for your leadership development architecture, how you acquire your leaders, how you develop your leaders, how you hold leaders accountable for producing the results that you desire and fulfilling their obligation on deliverables, do you have the same degree of rigor, the same degree of logic, the same degree of science in what you are doing to ensure that you're driving a high level of leader capacity, that then they can connect to their technical skills and then drive performance. And that's what I see lacking in many organizations. And so I have an approach to that and a solution to that gap in your leadership and performance management architecture, that you can become as rigorous in creating it and sustaining and managing it as you do in the other two areas. So we have 3 key discussion points, and we'll spend about 15 to 20 minutes on each of these for our remaining time. The first is you drive performance through leadership behavior. That's the first point, and I'll give you some data points and references on why this is fundamentally true. You drive organizational performance through leadership behavior. Here's why. Performance is a function of 2 coefficients. This is a science equation. Performance is a function of your technical skill times your behavior skill, or technical process capacity times behavior capacity. All of you have the same requisite degrees. You all have the same training. You all have the same access to continuous education and growth and development on all the process stuff, finances, systems management, and it goes accounting, clinical practices, it goes on and on and on. Everything on the strategic side, the process side of the organization, you all have it at a baseline level or higher for sustainability for performance. So that tends to be fixed. You know, we don't get a lot of new ideas and new ways of practicing technical skill capacity. But on the behavior side, you see, behavior now becomes the dependent variable. If you have a high degree of behavior capacity, such that you're allowing people to be able to connect to the part of the brain where performance resides, rather than having to be protective and fear, loss, doubt, worry, anxiety, threat management dynamics. Those are the contrasting worlds in which we live, with 2 parts of our brain competing against each other for our time and attention. Growth, development, and achievement performance on the one hand, it also includes a sense of well-being and joy in our work and satisfaction of our work, and surviving, just managing threat, managing fear, managing things that are disruptive to an inner sense of well-being. And so you put those 2 things together and you ebb and flow on the behavior side. The higher degree behavior capacity, the higher degree of behavior management and self-awareness you have to stay upper brain, the higher degree of performance, outcome, achievement, growth, and human development. But when that behavior capacity ebbs and it's decreased, it automatically pulls down your ability to connect to the part of the brain where all this technical stuff is, and performance goes down as well. So behavior strategy, behavior capacity is the new strategy to performance. High degree of behavior capacity, leading the brains of your people, creating a cultural work environment that allows people to come to work and connect to their leader, connect to the organization in a very positive, high degree of engaged dynamic, the higher degree your performance outcome. And hence leading the brains of people to higher levels of performance and personal well-being and satisfaction. We'll look at the 3 key domains that govern that: self-awareness, collaboration, and connection. And then we'll take a quick look at 4 fundamental behavior patterns. The good news is there's only 4. Each of you typically resides and lives day to day in one of these 4 behavior patterns for your own sense of stability, your own sense of threat management, and for your own sense of personal growth and achievement. So what is the key driver for organizational performance? Well, as I just alluded to, if you look at the center of this diagram, that's all the process stuff: strategy, process, structure, all the non-human components of healthcare delivery system work and effort is in the middle. And then we have these 2 people, behavior dynamics of people and culture. And individual leader behavior impacts on the people culture dynamic. So if you raise that level of affect in your organization, you automatically drive all the stuff in the middle to a higher level of achievement, and then performance grows as a result of that. Another way of looking at it is in an iceberg diagram, where what's above the line is all your technical process skill, what's below the line is your behavior skills. Notice in the wreck of the Titanic, it wasn't the part of the iceberg that was sticking out of the water that caused the breach of the hull. It was what was below the waterline that they didn't see. When the hull of the Titanic impacted those below waterline dynamics, then we had massive catastrophe. Same is true for you as a leader. It's not what's above the line that's going to impact your achievement and success dynamic as a leader. It's what's going on below the line. And a lower level behavior capacity as a leader will derail your career eventually. We see it every day. I was talking to a leader in a healthcare system today. They're in their 5th CEO in 7 years. Can you imagine what that means to that organization? To be trying to transition in a 7th CEO in 5 years? I'm reading in Becker's reports weekly of the massive turnover of healthcare CEOs, not even making it 2 years, barely getting their feet underneath them with a sense of the direction that they want to go. And something happens and they're out at 18 months. And this just happened as frequently as 2 of these turnovers just in the last week. So again, this is a cautionary tale. What's in it for you? What's a legitimate skin in the game for you? Well, it's your ability to continue to grow in development, accept higher levels of responsibility where you have the greatest impact of affecting the largest number of lives of human beings at the most positive way possible. And you derail your career in a behavior lapse, at some point along the way, you're going to lose that opportunity. The way to look at this in relationship to what influence and behavior means as opposed to expertise, what your technical skill dynamic is at the peak of the shaded area with the influential leader is a high degree of relationship building with a baseline level of expertise. And when you're a new leader and you're starting out and you're developing your career, your success is more dependent on your ability to demonstrate understanding of your responsibility technically and work with a team. But as you start to move up and progress through the organization, the more strategic you become, the more your success is predicated on relationship building and collaboration and sustainment of that through connections of relationships, and not on your individual level of expertise in the areas of which you govern as part of your senior leader responsibility. So leadership is a performance connection. Glenn Blanchard, best-selling author, The Heart of a Leader. It isn't something you do to people. Leadership is what you do with people. And there's a lot of mixed signals about that. As the cartoon adage shows here, there's a big difference between a leadership behavior that's with people and shouldering responsibility and burden with people, and leaders who tend to separate themselves. I know of one instance where a leader had a different entrance put in the building so he could go in and get to his office without having to go and see a lot of the people of the organization as he was making his way into his office every day. And as you might expect, that was just, pardon the expression, proverbial tip of the iceberg that started separating him from people, not focusing enough on building relationships as he focused on technical things. And it all ultimately ended up costing him his position, and the board removed him over time. So here's reflective questions for you. What could you do? What could you accomplish if your team set crystal clear goals, does disciplined action, positive enthusiastic attitude, ability to manage change, and mental toughness to overcome adversity? These are all traits of the upper brain. So if you knew and could practice behaviors leading the brains of your people, the upper brain part of your behavior, of your people, this is the things that leadership dynamic and the upper brain manifest, and you can imagine what happens in performance outcomes. So we're going to go to the first breakout room here. I'm going to send you out for 5 minutes. This exercise won't take you very long, but it'll give you a chance to say hello to your colleagues and wish each other well. But I want you to take 5 minutes, and then we'll look at your responses when we come back. I want a one-word attribute. All of you, hopefully, have had the opportunity to work for someone you would describe as your ideal leader. If they texted you tonight, called you tonight, emailed you tonight and said, I'm starting a new venture, would love to have you part of my team, you'd have to give serious consideration to saying yes to that. There's just something magical, enticing, mystical, if you will, about this individual that if you ever had the chance to work for this person again, you'd have just a hard time saying no. So go out to the breakout rooms. and share these one-word attributes of what is it that makes your ideal leader the ideal leader for you. And Katie, if we could send them out for 5 minutes, and then when we come back, we'll look at your responses.
Sounds good. Michael, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording.
Oh. Okay, Katie, if you give me the heads up as folks are returning, it looks like we get everybody back.
Yeah, it looks like everyone's back.
If you would go ahead and just type a one-word attribute in that you talked about in your group, or if you want to come off mic and just tell me what the ideal leader looks like for you and one of your one-word attributes, and why did you pick that attribute? Anybody want to go first? Feel free to go ahead. Visionary. Thank you, Andrew Van Zee. Yeah, visionary always makes the list. There's something about us developing a sense of security with a leader when we have a sense that we know where the leader's going. If you've ever worked for someone and you just needed some clarity of direction and that leader couldn't give it to you, it was too vague. And on one hand, meaning there wasn't any real clear direction. And some of you in your behavior pattern, your upper brain demands clarity of direction. So what I want you to think about is the one-word attributes that you picked. The first one that came off is I'm going to submit to you is directly related to your behavior pattern, particularly your upper brain behavior pattern for growth, development, and achievement. And if you had to work for a leader that didn't have these, it doesn't mean they're not a good leader or that they're a toxic leader. But if you worked for someone who in their behavior dynamic couldn't express what your upper brain needs the most for you to stay connected and engaged, you feel that loss. Even if they're a really good, kind person, if you need vision and they don't give it to you, you're going to feel that tension. If they don't give you integrity, AJ Kavanaugh, thank you. AJ, I have the sense, and bear this out with me, you put integrity as your key word. I bet you someone gets to lie to you once, they don't get to lie to you twice, AJ. Is that true? Lie to you twice and you cut them off at the knees. That's just my sense. Approachable, Curtis. Yes, you need a leader, right, that you can approach and they're approachable and you can get close to them. And if they're a prickly like a porcupine kind of thing, right? If they wire brush you, if you're trying to give them important information and they just don't want to pay attention, or every time you try to share with this leader, it's always a challenge, that's going to mess with your upper brain. And understanding from Jacob, transparency, Elena, authentic, Cindy. Yeah, Cindy, I have a sense that you don't do fakes, you don't do phonies, that you can smell a fake it to make it leader a mile away, as they say. And of course, if you have this sense that you're working with a leader who's faking it to make it, what happens to the trust dynamic? And what happens to your ability to connect with this leader in such a way that rather than be fully connected to your upper brain for performance, you're now stuck in having some kind of reticence, reluctance. You're in a lower brain sense of doubt and caution. And you see how anytime our behavior as a leader messes with the brain of another person within their key behavior pattern of these 4 behavior patterns, we lose the level of connection, and losing that connection, we lose the drive for performance. Shalini, thank you. Relatable. Yeah, I mean, is this someone that you share a common interest with, or that you can share just common understanding about the world in which we live? We call these mental models. Do you have some kind of connection in the mental model in the way we see the world, the way we process events as they happen to us on a daily basis? We share a sense of focus and understanding about events and problems and the way we problem solve. Demetria, honesty. Again, now honesty is a little bit different from integrity. So I'm saying, just following general data trends here and what we know about behavior patterns and what we know about words that represent core values. The words that you picked that were most important to you are a reflection of your core values, and your core values are a reflection of your behavior pattern. So for honesty, Dimitri, I have a sense that you like a unity, that you like the fact that people can get along. When people aren't getting along well with one another in sharing truths, propositions, and helping each other, that somehow that can be disruptive to your upper brain, lower brain homeostasis. So for all of those comments, am I accurate to a degree in how I took your word and conveyed it to how your brain is necessarily affected by the behavior of a leader? And most important, perhaps, when that behavior is absent. Again, notice we're not talking about somebody behaving in a toxic, inappropriate, disruptive behavior. We're talking about a leader who just doesn't know how to express behavior into your pattern in a way that your upper brain now lights up like the 4th of July. Sean just added one, a resilient leader. Yeah, the idea that a leader can admit, look, I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to pretend to be the expert. But I know that if we can come together and use our collective intelligence and our collective talent, that no matter how hard we get hit today with something like a pandemic, if we stay together, if we work together, if we believe in each other, we can rebound and we can impact this event in a positive way, where we still have a sense of control over the direction and the scope of our work, and we don't sort of just allow ourselves to become victims and at the mercy of these events as they play out on us every day. And so that's the idea of resiliency, that the leader can guide team members into focus on what you control, pay attention to those things, take your eyes off of things that you don't control, quit complaining about things that we can't impact, that we have no control over. It's a waste of our time and our energy. It's only going to suck us into the black hole of our lower brain. Let's set a clear set of objectives that we can impact, that we can control on a daily basis. Let's put our time and energy into things that we can control. This is often referred to as your circle of control and your circle of influence, rather than a circle of concern. And the more effective you are in managing your circle of control and influence, the greater degree of discovery and impact your upper brain opens up, leading you into new ways of doing things, new solutions, problem solving, enhanced unity and teamwork in the team, and your survival brain calms down. When you go the other direction, when you start spending time and energy and discussion and meetings, and you let someone hijack your meeting into negativity on things that you don't control, there's nothing that'll get you into the lower brain faster than that kind of team activity. And you as a leader have responsibility not to let that happen. Thank you all very much. I wish we had much more time to explore these concepts. But again, in the time that we have tonight, in the idea of just stimulating your thinking, then we're going to move on, because we have a few more things to talk about as we come up on the top of the hour. So here's part of the problem. Highly successful people are protective. Dare I use the word superstitious? For those of you who have already reached the C-suite, you are wedded to, connected to, you believe in, are superstitious with, and very protective of behaviors that you think propelled you into that level of success, growth, and achievement to arrive at the C-suite level. The reality is you may have just been lucky. It is a fallacy of logic to say, I have arrived at this level. I behaved this way, therefore I arrived at this level because I behaved that way. That's a false syllogism. Maybe you just happened to work for the right person, and maybe they were very similar to you in behavior patterns. So whatever your behavior flaw was, it was their flaw too, and you were both blind to the same behavior flaw simultaneously. Okay, but the key takeaway from this first segment of the presentation is you can't change what you don't manage. You can't manage what you don't know. You cannot afford to be blind to behavior that you're exhibiting day to day in your team meetings, in your one-on-ones. You cannot afford to be blind either to an ineffective behavior, which is behaving in a way that doesn't impact the upper brain of your team members like we just did in our exercise, or worst case, you're behaving in a way that's literally provoking the lower brain of your team member because it is an ineffective, bad behavior that's provoking the lower brain. So worst case is you blow up their lower brain. The corrective state would be learning how to behave into their pattern to stimulate their upper brain so that their brain works the way their brain is designed to work, to connect to your plan, connect to your strategy, and produce results at the high level that you desire. And those are the alternatives that you have as a leader in your own behavior. The worst case, don't even want to talk about it. It shouldn't even be happening. Tragically, there's too much of it. There's too much of it in healthcare right now, to be very bold and blunt and frank with you. There's just too much inappropriate, toxic behavior that is making it very difficult for people to want to even get up in the morning and even go to work, let alone to the blind dynamics we have to just things that we're not adding and contributing into the behavior patterns of others that really turns their upper brain on for performance. And again, if you have any comments or thoughts about what I'm saying, please feel free to share it, and I'm glad to comment on it with you. But here's what I don't want you to forget. Our behavior lapses are painfully obvious to everyone except us as we commit them. And so you've got to find a way of getting information and ways of opening up yourself to potential blind spots you have in behavior, because your individual leader behavior is the single most important predictor to how your teams perform. This was such a powerful thought. I published a book with Health Administration Press and ACHE 8 years ago, which fortunately, and I'm very grateful for, is now a Health Administration Press bestseller titled Influential Leadership, where I teach very concretely, very hands-on with practical exercise, the 3 domains of self-awareness, collaboration, and connection, and take what you're hearing tonight and fleshing it out in very tangible, actionable ways so that you can acquire a behavior pattern as a leader that's not only your innate one, where you feel the most comfortable being you in key sets of behaviors for your own upper brain, but where you can learn to flex into the behavior patterns of others to maximize their upper brain capacity as well. So we want to close the gap in performance. And the way we have to close that gap, and a concluding thought on this first teaching point, is in behavior. So I've got a couple key takeaways for you to summarize. These slides are available for you in the LMS. Please take them and use them for your own teaching edification and building your own mini little workshop, if you will, for your own teams at your own organization. But individual leader behavior is the key. And what you need to do is role model the key behaviors that then set your team members up for the highest level of operational improvement and sustained performance excellence. We want to keep from becoming emotionally disconnected from people. Look at the words that you picked in this exercise. This is called quantitative research. I really set you up. When I say individual leader behavior is the single most important predictor to an individual and team's performance, you proved it by connecting emotionally and memory to your ideal leader and then sharing those attributes with me. You see, I already knew that you were going to share behaviors, not technical skills. Did you notice that not one of the responses, and it doesn't mean you didn't have one, but the responses that people brought forth were indicative of behavior and not technical skill? You see how you connect emotionally with a leader in behavior before you connect in emotional skill? If you can't make that emotional connection, you can't connect physically and electromagnetically and neurochemically, right? Evidence-based, science-based, the way the brain works, neurophysiology, not personality, not psychology. We're talking about neuroscience, physiology stimulated behaviors that maximize performance and growth on the one hand, or work to the detriment to it on the other. So let's go to then point number 2, and that is organizations tend to blossom and flourish under leadership that practice the very thing that I'm sharing with you tonight. They're organizations that are thriving in the pandemic. They have a high degree of retention. They're actually having a high degree of recruitment. The leadership is focusing on managing the well-being of their team members effectively, so then all those team members can go manage the well-being of their patients. And we're seeing it reflected in decision-making that impacts on key behaviors as they're exhibited by leaders day to day within the organization to maintain trust and to maintain a high degree of highly effective relationship. I had my first face-to-face meeting 2 weeks ago in San Diego for the American Association of Anesthesia Society. And I did a keynote for them, an hour and a half as well, like we're doing this evening. And the topic they picked was, Michael, you need to tell us how to rebuild trust when we lose it as leaders. Because there have been a high degree of lost trust with leaders and their members of their organization. And there's a very tangible, hands-on, very practical, science-based approach to what you need to do as leaders to regain trust when you've lost it. You lose trust, you lose relationships, you lose relationships, you lose performance. It's just the science of how the brain works. So there are 3 domains to this: self-awareness, collaboration, and connection, as I alluded to earlier. What they suggest is that there is a leadership behavior capacity, right? A leadership behavior competence, leadership behavior skill in knowing which behaviors and how to exhibit those behaviors that ignite the upper brain cognitive performance function of the human brain. It's also a certain set of behaviors that connect people in highly effective relationships with a high degree of trust, a high degree of empathy, and a high degree of compassion. The difference between empathy and compassion is often overlooked. We hear a lot about empathic leaders today. Harvard Business Review is publishing a host of articles, Inc. magazine, Forbes, Modern Healthcare magazine, become the empathic leader. No, you need to be more than empathic. You need to be compassionate. Empathy is your ability to recognize that someone else is in distress, an emotional fatigue, a spiritual fatigue, a physical fatigue. Being aware as a leader, being alert to the body language of your team members, the way they sit in meetings, the way they express themselves physically. You can see all that and as empathy, but that doesn't do you any good until you actually turn that from a noun into a verb, which is compassion, and you start to do something to relieve that burden. Keep the picture of King Sisyphus in your mind. One of your primary responsibilities to drive performance in your organization is to reduce the size of the burden of the rock that the people of your organization are carrying every day. The larger you contribute to adding burden, you're guaranteeing the lower level of performance, and you're devastating the overall well-being of the people coming to work in your organization. If you find ways to reduce that burden, then the manifestation of engagement goes up. The amount of non-compliant behavior goes down. Non-compliant behavior is directly correlated scientifically and in evidence-based studies to the degree of burden that people bear every day. The higher degree of burden, real or perceived, the higher degree of non-compliant behavior. It's just the science of behavior performance management. So here is a self-reflective question. Let's say that tomorrow morning you have a team meeting and your team members always get there first because nobody wants to be late or delayed and come in after the leader's already there starting the meeting. And so while they're waiting for you tomorrow to come into a very significant, important meeting, maybe it's one of your daily huddle meetings. Maybe it's getting your daily COVID status update. Maybe it's getting a general state of the organization every morning meeting so people can go off and then do great, wonderful things to push this high level achievement of your strategic plan. But here's the key question to ask. When does the upper brain, or when does their lower brain, and I like to say it in the positive side, when does their upper brain light up for performance? When you come in the room or when you go out of the room? See, your mere presence in that room is affecting the physiological dynamic of the brains of people. And it's positive in upper brain if they have this positive connection with you, and it goes lower brain if that connection is missing. If it's just missing, you have a lower level of degrading of performance. But if it's even worse than that, if it's disruptive and toxic, you can almost guarantee there's going to be no functional performance in the organization at all. This is just a way of looking at it neurophysiologically. And there's 2 key points here. It isn't just about the brain works, it's the way the brain works to thought and emotion. Our emotions exist to tell us about how we feel about what we're thinking. You have a thought first. Take this in your own personal experience. Prove it by the quantitative proof of your own experience at work. Each of you knows the difference of what it felt like to have to get up in the morning and go to work for a highly effective leader, and what it meant to get up and have to go to work for a less effective leader. You know that. You know your own emotional affect to that. And when I define engagement and teach the elements of leader behavior to drive high engagement, people coming to work to further the interest of the organization, connected with each other and their teams, connected with their leader, driving performance, feeling great about their self efficacy and meaning and value and purpose of the work. I like to call that waking up in the middle of the night disappointed it's not time to go to work yet. When you get that kind of affect, and it's a hyperbole, I understand, okay, but when you get people mentally in their mental models, the way they think about their work, the way they're emoting about their work in this high upper state, they can't help but come to work and contribute well in their own individual work. And even more than that, they now look to help their team members, and reach out and do some of the work of their team members to help relieve that burden that their team members are carrying, knowing that one day that burden can be on them and they'd want somebody to come along and help them. And this is how it works neurochemically, right? If you receive a random act of kindness from someone relieving burden in your life, you get a high degree of stimulation of a neurochemical called oxytocin. Oxytocin is essential for the brain to process human interaction for a high degree of trust. And in that high degree of trust, social bonding, and that social bonding, team unity, and a high performing team that now collectively we can go produce results at a high level. Absence of oxytocin, you don't get any of that. Okay, so as we do acts of kindness to one another, helping each other bear our burdens and share our burdens, the individual receiving the act of kindness gets that oxytocin. That's really good. Here's the key. The person doing the act of kindness, giving of their time, giving of their effort into the work of somebody else, even if their work is all done and they could just sit back and kick back and just do nothing. Rather than that, they look to go invest themselves in the burden of their team members. The person giving of themselves that way, putting the needs of others ahead of self, they get a high dose of oxytocin too. Now, here's the real kicker. If you're the leader and you're just observing your team members doing this with each other, and you're feeling pretty good about what you're watching, the reason you feel pretty good about it is you're getting an equal dose of that same oxytocin that each of them is getting, and you're not even involved in the act itself, you're just observing it. And the science shows that you get an equal amount of oxytocin as well. Increased trust, increased social connection, social bonding. So for fun, everything that I'm speaking to you about tonight and trying to teach to you to the limited time that I have, I just like for fun to call this neurochemical bartending. If you know how to mix the right drink in somebody else's head, they'll follow you anywhere. And it doesn't make any difference what level of technical skill you have, what level of Maslow hierarchy of need on base fundamental skills of food and clothing and income. Money is never a motivator. Money is always a satisfier. Money is a base satisfied drive. It never produces high level of performance outcomes. Financial bonuses and financial incentives never work at raising the level of high degree of connection, unity, harmony, and collaboration, and high levels of performance outcome. It just doesn't do it. It doesn't have enough oomph, if you will, in it to stimulate the upper brain enough in a neurochemical cocktail. But random acts of kindness do. Expression of gratitude and appreciation and thoughtfulness, those behaviors do. So I guess we could say tonight, the primary element of this keynote for you is how would you like to become a neurochemical bartender? Again, these are the key for what neuroscience likes to call the happy chemicals. They are essential to creating an engaged and committed workforce. Creating an engaged and committed workforce has nothing to do with technical capacity. It has everything to do with behavior capacity. And I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This isn't an either or, process or people. Performance is a function of both. The work of a leader is both. And I coach and do a lot of executive coaching work with leaders who misunderstand that their work isn't just their technical process stuff. Their work also includes people development, one-on-one coaching development of people. And if you struggle to understand that and you limit the amount of your work on the people side, you'll limit the amount of your overall effectiveness as a leader in your performance outcome results. It isn't an either or, it isn't about process. And there's some people who are oriented just to people and they tend to neglect the process side. So however your behavior pattern is oriented, you have to be cautious that you're not emphasizing one at the expense of the other. And highly effective leaders understand very clearly how to manage the context between their work involving process and their work involving people, and they put them together. And that makes for a very highly influential and effective leader. And look, I can prove this with MRIs. We have a database of functional MRIs, and we have a collaborative relationship with some neuroscience researchers who do this. And you can see the resilient coping dynamic, the performance dynamic of the brain on the left. You see those orange, yellow, this prefrontal cortex is on fire right there. And you can see what happens in the lower brain side in risk coping when you're managing threat versus managing discovery, and what does this mean, and what do we need to do now moving forward, resilient questions versus the threat question. Why did this happen to me? This always happens to me. When is this bad stuff going to stop happening to me? And all of those questions lead into a phenomena called learned hopelessness. And the brain responds physiologically to that thought emotion dynamic. So when I talk about neurochemical bartending and you having the ability to influence the brains of people, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You have the ability as a leader to behave in a way to manifest what you see in resilient coping, upper brain performance, or you can contribute to what's happening in threat management and risk coping and watch the brains of your people literally just turn off. A way of measuring this in your organization is a wonderful assessment tool I have no financial stake in whatsoever. I was very fortunate to win 2 ACHE educational grants and spent a lot of time researching and finding solutions, real tangible solutions to the technical and learning components of our performance management system and leader development model. And the MASLAC burnout inventory tool, the MBI, is the best I've ever seen. I use it with all of our client organizations. The best part of this, it does cost $4 a person, but it's a minimal cost. It's not free, like some that you can get out there. But the beauty of this tool and what makes this tool most effective is the range of spectrum that it provides. There are 5 profile types. Many organizations survey for engagement versus burnout on either you're burned out or you're not. Well, by using a spectrum approach, you can be not burned out, but you can still be disengaged. And do you want a neurosurgeon or a cardiovascular surgeon operating whose exhaustion level is low to moderate, but their cynicism is high and their efficacy is low to moderate? I walked past an orthopedic surgeon at 6:30 in the morning in the day surgery area, leaning up against the wall like it was holding him up because he was going to fall over if he wasn't leaning against the wall. I with some empathic intuitiveness, I said, "Excuse me, I don't mean to bother you, but you don't look okay. Is there something wrong? Is there something I can do to help you?" And the only part of his body that he turned was his head. And he said, "No." He never asked me who I was or why I asked. I always find that interesting. He just answered the question. "No, there's nothing you can do to help me because there's no help for me. I hate this place, I hate my job, and I hate my life." And at that, he walked off to go to a scrub sink to scrub in for his first of 4 total knee procedures that day. All right, let's go to another exercise. Let's take 5 minutes. And for these 5 minutes, what I'd like you to talk about is what's your own level of self-awareness? Share with each other. Has anybody ever tried to share with you something about your behavior that they didn't think was complimentary to you, that somehow it was a bad reflection of your character, or it was causing your reputation to be questioned? Remember, reputation is what other people think about you. It's external. Reputation is the view of what other people believe you to be. Your character is who you really are. So share with each other. And have you ever had a learning experience where someone had the courage, or you invited someone to share something about your behavior that was affecting them and impacting them and keeping them from being able to connect to you, connect to the plan, and execute at a high level? What was your behavior lapse? And then how did you overcome it? What did you do about it? 5 minutes, it won't take long. This should come to your memory very quickly, and I'll see you back in 5 minutes. And then anybody who feels so inclined to share and be vulnerable and share what that was and how overcoming that behavior lapse was so beneficial for you, that would be worthwhile as well. See you in 5 minutes. Thank you. Katie, you want to go ahead and give them 1 minute?
Sure.
Thank you.
Of course.
Well, it's amazing how fast this time goes. Okay, well, I wish again that we had so much more time than we do just for a keynote, but I understand, the dynamics of the evening. Anybody care to share your experience with this exercise and your own level of self-awareness? That would be helpful. Chad, thank you. Great conversation in our group about receiving feedback, almost overcorrecting. Yeah, one of the things I can say to that is not every bad habit is a bad habit, right? You can have different kinds of behavior tics, as we like to call them, but they're only impactful as a leader if the degree in which they're disrupting other people. The other thing is that people are very charitable. If they recognize that you're very fast paced as a leader, and that you think quickly and you talk quickly and you conceptualize quickly. I've got a box not too far away from me in an attic storage room that's full of bungee cords and Energizer bunnies. And they were little gag gifts that different team members along the way in my 22-year military career and 13 years in healthcare executive work, and now the last 10 years in teaching and consulting. I just started my 5th decade in healthcare. I started as a janitor in my local critical access hospital at 16 in June of that year, and now I'm 66 and into my 5th decade. And so I've just seen so much transpire over time. But this idea of behavior and being affected by behavior, even in my own, and now I'm self-confessing, right? So because I move quickly, I talk quickly, I think quickly, I can have the tendency to interrupt people, talk over people. If someone's talking at a moderate pace or even at a slow pace and I waiting for them to fill in the sentence, I can get impatient and fill it in for them. How rude is that? But people generally will give us grace and charity in some of these things until we find the one that really, really turns their lower brain upside down. And then they tend not to be as charitable in sharing it with us and may not even share it with us at all. The idea of getting a 360 and using a 360, I prefer what I call living 360s. And by that, I mean being willing as a leader to just have conversations with key stakeholders around you. If you're CEO, members of the board, members of your C-suite team, your first line direct reports, and rather than have them fill out something on paper to give you information, just sit around and have a conversation where they get to tell you face to face a key behavior dynamic, and they're both positive and those that you could do some work on. That behavior into context. It can here was the situation. This is the impact that behavior caused negatively. That kind of a paper 3. Can't tell you the importance of this as a leader to be into your blind, solve those blind spots. I've only got about 6 minutes to summarize the final elements presentation. So that you have a few minutes remaining, Chad, Rodney, summarize. But this is in Human Performance Institute. I've had to many senior executives and executives. Dando as part of the senior executive this learning development center. The energy dynamic of you complete it with some demographic information. I'll send this back to you, what you're seeing on is from below 50 to above. And cluster session, I teach self-aware of where they currently stand on their own level of engagement. It's invaluable to you information. So here's just fortunately connection. Make here in summary, learn what the JJH tool will give you.
Hey, Michael, I
But it won't give
apologize to
you-
interrupt you, but we're having some connection issues and people are having trouble hearing you. So I was just going to ask if you could turn off your video, perhaps. That might help us hear a little bit better.
I turn off my video. There we go.
Michael, are you there?
You know, Katie, we're about at time anyways.
Yeah.
Rodney, you want to take us home?
Rodney, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. This was a great, outstanding presentation, and I want to thank you for that. I want to say this too, Michael. Something that I took away from this meeting is that individual leader behavior is the single greatest predictor to how your teams perform. And I thank you for that. I also want to say highly influential leaders are effective at being able to appeal to their team's emotional and technical wants and needs. And as you framed it, they're good at being neurochemical bartenders. So thank you. I also want to send a special thank you to our IHEN administrator, Corey Josie, who does a lot behind the scenes that makes our organization run smoothly. Also, I want to say thank you to our IHEN program committee members for putting in the work to make this program a success. A special thanks to Jacob Butts, Savali Badu, Marcus Gooden, and Kathy Wagner of the programs committee. I wanted to let you know before we head out a few IHEN updates. We have an IHEN Equity of Care meeting that is coming in December. The exact date is to be determined, but we have an outstanding panel that's forming for that. So definitely be on the lookout. We also have a podcast that's coming soon. We're just doing some final post-production edits, and that will be out very soon. Make sure you follow us on our social. We got LinkedIn, Twitter, and a Facebook page. Also check us out on our website too. Again, thank you for your time today. I want to say a special thank you to our 2021 sponsors. Without them, our events and our programs would not be possible. So special thank you to them for that. And I'm going to get you guys out of here quickly. So with that, I will hand it over to Katie Russo from ACHE to do some final credit reminders and a final send-off. Thank you.
Thanks, Rodney. And I think we might have lost Michael. I don't think he's on here anymore, connection issues, but I'm just glad it happened at the end. So I will thank him afterward. But thank you to the IHEN group for sponsoring and coordinating this event. And of course, to all of you for participating today. The session is worth 1.5 hours again. And just please note that credits will be applied to your record automatically in 2 to 3 weeks. And we also ask you to please remember to fill out that program evaluation for both the feedback to the faculty and to the sponsor for future programming opportunities. Thank you all again. We look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great evening. And this session is copyrighted in 2021 by the American College of Healthcare Executives, all rights reserved. Thanks again, everyone. Take care.
Have a great night.